This is the US dollar, the most powerful currency in the world for almost 80 years. But today, something unusual is happening. A group of rising nations called BRICS is quietly building its own financial system, and some experts think it could challenge the dollar's global power. So why is this battle happening now? What makes BRICS a real threat? And what could this mean for the future of the world economy? Now, before we look at this hidden battle, we need to understand one simple thing. The US dollar did not become powerful by accident. It became powerful because most countries agreed to use it for trade, saving, and investment. Oil is priced in dollars. Global loans are taken in dollars. Even when countries trade with each other, they often still use the dollar. This makes the US dollar something like the main highway of the financial world. Everyone uses it because everyone else uses it. But this power also creates problems. It makes the United States extremely influential, sometimes more influential than other countries are comfortable with. The US government can freeze assets, block payments, pressure international banks, and guide global money flows. And during global crises, countries still run to the dollar, which gives the United States a huge advantage. This is where BRICS comes in. BRICS is a group of major nations that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Recently, new members have joined or are preparing to join, including Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. Together, these countries hold a massive share of global population, natural resources, and manufacturing power. They control some of the biggest energy markets, some of the world's largest farms, and some of the fastest growing cities. So far, the likes of China and Russia have been the loudest voices, calling for a world where they do not need to rely so heavily on the US dollar on paper. This sounds simple. In reality, it is not. But the fact that BRICS is even trying is what makes this moment so interesting. The world has not seen a serious challenger to the dollar in decades. So what exactly are BRICS countries doing? Well, several things. First, they are trading more with each other using their own currencies instead of the dollar. China is paying Russia in yuan. India is buying oil from the Middle East using rupees. Brazil and China have created direct exchange systems to convert their currencies without using dollars at all. Even African countries like Kenya and Nigeria are starting to explore trade in yuan instead of dollars. This alone is a major shift because the dollar used to sit in the middle of almost every large international trade. Second, BRICS is building its own lending institutions. The new development bank, sometimes called the BRICS Bank, is designed to be an alternative to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These two institutions have been dominated by the United States and Europe for decades. But the BRICS Bank gives emerging nations a new option where they can borrow money without following Western political conditions. It also allows countries to borrow in local currencies, which protects them from huge swings in the dollar. Third, there is the big idea that most people are watching a possible new BRICS currency. The idea of a shared global currency is not new. The European Union already has the euro. But the BRICS currency would work very differently. It would not replace national currencies. Instead, it would act like a shared reserve currency that members can use to trade with each other. Some people compare it to a digital coin backed by real commodities like gold, oil, and rare minerals. Others imagine a digital token used only for large trade settlements handled between central banks. Either way, the goal is clear. BRICS wants a financial safety net that does not depend on the US dollar. But why is this battle happening now? Well, several major events pushed it forward. For one, the world saw what the United States could do when it froze Russia's foreign reserves during the Ukraine conflict. This was a shock to many countries. They realized that even if their money was stored outside of the United States, the US could still block it. That made several governments uncomfortable, especially big powers like China, Saudi Arabia, and even smaller nations that worry about being caught in geopolitical crossfires. Another major reason is inflation in the United States. Over the last few years, the US printed a huge amount of money to manage economic crises. When the US prints money, the entire world feels the effects because so much global trade depends on dollars. This made several countries feel like they were being forced to pay the price for America's decisions. Even nations with stable budgets saw their import prices rise because the dollar became stronger and their own currencies became weaker. And then there is the long-term shift. Many BRICS countries are becoming powerful on their own. China is the world's biggest manufacturer. India has one of the fastest growing economies. Russia controls massive energy supplies. Brazil is a giant in agriculture and natural resources. South Africa and the Middle East hold enormous mineral and energy wealth. These countries feel they are strong enough to build their own financial system instead of relying on the one built in Washington and New York. But all of this raises a very important question. Can BRICS really challenge the US dollar? To answer this, we must look at what makes the dollar powerful in the first place. First, the US economy is extremely large and stable. Even when things look messy, investors still trust it. Second, the United States has very deep financial markets. People can easily buy and sell US bonds without worrying about major risks. Third, the US dollar is accepted everywhere. Every bank recognizes it, every government needs it, every trader uses it. The entire global system is already built around it. BRICS currencies do not have these advantages, yet China tightly controls its money. Russia faces heavy sanctions. India's currency is not as stable as it needs to be for global use. Brazil and South Africa have economic challenges, and coordinating many different national interests into one shared financial plan is not easy. But here is the interesting twist. BRICS does not need to fully replace the US dollar to be successful. Even reducing dollar usage by 10 or 15% would change the global financial system. It would weaken America's monetary power. It would increase BRICS' influence, and it would push the world toward a multi-currency system instead of one currency dominating everything. We can already see the early signs of this. More countries want to join BRICS. More oil producers are accepting non-dollar payments. China and Saudi Arabia are discussing energy trades in yuan. Russia is pushing for gold-backed trade. Even Europe has quietly increased its trade settlements in euros rather than dollars. The real battle is not about one currency beating another. It is about countries wanting more control over their own money, their own trade, and their own future. Now, there is one more layer to this story: technology. Digital currencies are becoming more powerful. China already has a digital yuan. India is testing a digital rupee. Russia is exploring digital payments for global trade. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are experimenting with cross-border blockchain settlements. Digital currencies make it easier for countries to move money without using Western banks or the SWIFT system. If BRICS members connect their digital currencies into one shared network, that could be the real game changer. It would allow instant transactions across continents. It would reduce the need for US banking systems. It would weaken American sanctions. And it would give BRICS countries something they never had before: a fast, cheap, and independent payment system. Imagine a world where Brazil buys Chinese machines using a digital token that settles instantly. Or where Saudi oil is sold using a digital BRICS coin backed by physical gold. Or where India pays Russia using a blockchain system that bypasses all Western networks. None of this needs US banks or the US dollar. And that is the part that worries American policymakers the most. But despite these growing changes, it is important to stay realistic. The US dollar is not going to collapse tomorrow. It is still the world's safest currency. It is still trusted by global investors. And it is still used in more than 80% of all foreign exchange transactions. BRICS can grow, but the dollar will not disappear overnight. So what will the future look like? Most economists believe that we are heading into a world with several strong currencies instead of one dominant currency. The dollar will remain powerful. The euro will remain important. BRICS currencies will play a bigger role in trade and lending. It will be a slow shift, not a sudden one. But slow shifts still reshape the world. For the last 80 years, the United States has enjoyed something called the dollar privilege. Because the world uses its currency, the US can borrow cheaply, spend heavily, and influence global politics. If the dollar loses even a small part of its dominance, that privilege becomes weaker. America will still be strong, but not as unmatched as before. On the other hand, BRICS countries will gain more independence. They will be less vulnerable to sanctions. They will have more control over their own trade, and they will have a stronger voice in global decisions. In the end, the real story is not about a war between the dollar and BRICS. It is about a world that is changing. Power is shifting, economies are rising, and countries are looking for new ways to protect themselves in a global system that has long been shaped by the United States. Whether BRICS succeeds or not, the fact that this battle has begun is already reshaping the global financial map. And whatever comes next will affect every country, every business, and every person who uses money anywhere in the world. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.